Welcome back to those of you who have been following the recordings around International Alzheimer's Awareness Month. So I'd like to chat about the 3Ds: dementia, delirium, and depression. Now, for those of you who've watched some of the other recordings, I talked about the fact that dementia is a diagnosis by exclusion. That means that there are a number of things that we should exclude before we even begin to think of a possible diagnosis of dementia. Depression is one of them. I have talked about that before, and I won't elaborate much on that. But a chronic depression can present with what seems to look like dementia. There could be confusion that is a result of withdrawal or a chemical imbalance or various different factors that would present with the so-called symptoms of dementia. And I keep on referring to the so-called symptoms of dementia because I think so many things are attributed to dementia that really are not symptoms of dementia. Confusion is one of them. Whilst, yes, many people living with dementia are confused, not all people who are confused are living with dementia. And I think we should be very clear on that there are certain conditions that seems to mask themselves as being a type of dementia. And I think one has to be very careful to make sure that you get a proper diagnosis before you just venture down the road of assuming that someone has got dementia. Delirium is a very tricky condition. It can be caused by a number of things. It is very difficult to diagnose and often, again, presents itself as if a person is living with dementia. One of the big differences between dementia and delirium is that delirium happens within seconds. From one moment to the next, a person might become delirious. That is not the case with dementia. I would often hear people say, you know, my mother went in for a hip operation, she's 84 years old, she came out and she's now living with dementia. I would really question that. We see often with people who have a long anesthetic that there is a chemical imbalance in the brain, which again presents with what seems to be confusion and often a delirious state. This is not dementia. Dementia does not happen overnight. Dementia doesn't happen because of an event, whereas delirium can. I've seen people go into a delirious state as a result of shock. The death of a spouse, the death of a child. An accident, a motor car accident, can lead to a state of delirium. Hospital stays, long anesthetic, a chemical imbalance caused by, as we said before, iatrogenic disorders, the side effects of medication, or, as I said, long hospitalizations or anesthetic. Someone who is severely dehydrated can go into a state of delirium. Someone who took their medication not according to the script. For instance, someone took a double dose of their medication, or someone who forgot to take medication. Often there is an interaction between medications. Maybe one doctor prescribed one type of medication, another doctor prescribed another type. They don't know about the interaction. That could cause a state of delirium. As I say, delirium in older people is often confused with dementia. It goes on for a long time, and then it's just accepted as a chronic condition. Most types of delirium should be able to be sorted within hours or days. But I have heard and seen a state of delirium that can go on for weeks, which is actually quite frightening for everyone around, because often we don't know the cause of the state of delirium, and it is very difficult to then find the cure for that. So in short, if someone is suddenly showing a change in behavior, even if that change in behavior carries on for quite some time, that is not necessarily dementia. That could very well be a state of delirium. Depression happens over a very long period of time for many people, although there are also instances where people might become very depressed after, for instance, an operation or a long anesthetic or a shock or a drastic change like moving into a care facility. Now, if a person lives with this kind of depression for a long time, they will withdraw, they will lose interest, they will most probably not eat properly, they will not necessarily stay hydrated. Many people go off their medication, and this depression can then result in an impaired homeostasis, where the equilibrium in the body, the physiological equilibrium, is disturbed. This might also present with what we call the symptoms of dementia. The most important thing is when you are worried that you might have cognitive impairment, to start eliminating the risk factors that I've described. Go to your GP, not in order to find a diagnosis of dementia, but to try and exclude possible reasons for the feelings that you are feeling or the condition that you are experiencing. If it is memory loss, start with eliminating all the possible aspects that could cause that memory loss. This is a good point of departure. If there is nothing obvious, then I would say go for the next round. Go and see a psychiatrist or a neurologist or a neuropsychologist to try and find out exactly what is happening. I have to emphasize again that we are complex beings. There is very seldom just a straightforward answer why things change. We need to consider the complexity of our being in the world before we simply go for a diagnosis or a label that could have such devastating long-term effects. So start with eliminating the things that might have changed or be the reason for things having changed before just going with the assumption that someone might be living with dementia.